So we are working through the book of Exodus, and we are watching. I hope anyway. We're watching. We're seeing. We are um, reading as the nation Israel becomes a nation. They haven't ever been a nation. Think about that. The Israelites have been a people group, but they've never been a nation before. They don't know what it means to be a nation. They've never been self-governed. They were a family, and the family moved to Egypt, and the family grew, but they've never been a nation before. And so in the book of Exodus, we see God developing them and leading them into being a nation and what it means for them to be a nation, a people of God. So they're really learning that. They're really being developed by that, and God is leading them. And all the stories we've read so far are kind of lessons on how to be a nation that follows God, how to be a people who are in a right relationship with God. And so this morning, as we hit chapter 17 of Exodus, we're going to get two stories. Two stories that really develop who the nation is. It's another aspect of their learning, of God's teaching them, of God's leading them, of God developing them into a nation. But not only a nation, remember we're talking about a people of God, a nation of God. In some ways you could put in there a church. God is developing his people, his called out ones, his holy people, which is what we as disciples of Christ are called in the book of First Peter. We're a holy nation, a called out people, a royal priesthood, and that's who we are. So let's read chapter 17 of Exodus. We'll start with the first 7 verses. That's our first story, and it's a familiar story. This is going to sound like, wait a minute, haven't we heard this before? Well, in a way we have. Chapter 17 of Exodus. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" Verse 3, but the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me." Verse 5, the Lord answered Moses, "Walk on ahead of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out from it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Sounds like a familiar story. Here we have the Israelites running out of water again. We saw that back in chapter 15, and where they came to the waters of Marah, and they were bitter waters, and they couldn't drink the water, and they said, "Moses, what are you doing? Why are we here? Why did you bring us to a place where we don't have any water?" There's many similarities in this story that I want to point out to the story in chapter 15. There's at least 5 similarities, maybe more, that you will be able to find as you study it yourself, but they leave the desert of Sin and they travel from place to place until they come to Rephidim. Now, in chapter 15, when they came to Marah, they traveled for 3 days. The same thing it applies here, actually. Look at Numbers chapter 33. Numbers chapter 33. We find that as we read Numbers 33, that they traveled 3 days from the desert of Sin to Rephidim. So in verse 11, let's start there. Or did I start at 12? Verse 12, they left the desert of Sin and camped at Dophkah. They left Dophkah and camped at Alish. They left Alish and camped at Rephidim. where there was no water for the people to drink. Chapter 33 of Numbers gives the whole list of places they went to and camped at and stopped at. And so if you want to know, you want to make a chart or something, look at Numbers 33 and it will give you the whole itinerary of where they went. So we learn that from the desert of Sin to Rephidim is 3 days, just like it was going from the Red Sea to the waters of Marah. 3 days. So they would have, when they left the desert of Sin, they would have stocked up on water. They would have known that it's dry, it's dusty, it's desert. They're rationing water. And just like they did in chapter 15, and just like in chapter 15, they would have expected to come across water. They would have expected that after the 3-day journey, they would have been able to renew their water supplies and drink all that they wanted to drink and stop rationing water, and they would have been fine. They get to Rephidim, and there is no water for the people to drink. So there's the expectation of water, which is not fulfilled. And again, their lives are in peril. They're in the desert. They know that if they don't have water soon, they're going to die. They are right when they say, why did you lead us? Well, they're right to say, we're here in the desert and we're going to die of thirst, our children and our livestock, if we don't have water. Just like they said at the waters of Marah in chapter 15. So their lives are in peril. They've expected water and didn't get it. They've traveled for a long time, and they need this water, and the result of not getting what they expected, same as chapter 15. They grumble against Moses. We could say, what are they doing? Like, why are they grumbling? They've already kind of gone through this because they have seen God provide to go through the Red Sea. They've seen God provide at Marah to change the bitter water to sweet water. They have seen God provide meat and a daily manna. So they know God can provide. They've seen him at work. So why are they grumbling again? What is going on? Why on earth would they think that they're going to die of thirst when they didn't before? I think that's a fair question. And I think maybe there's a fair answer to it, to a degree at least. So, although there's similarities to chapter 15, the waters at Marah, there are some significant differences here too. One of the significant differences is they get to Rephidim and there is no water. There's not just a big body of water that they can't drink, there's no water. If there was a large body of water that was bitter water, they would have said, we've seen this happen before. We have experience in this. Get a chunk of wood, throw it in, the water becomes sweet. We know how this works. Okay, we're taken care of. But it's different. They get there and there is no water. Now, Rephidim means resting places or place of rest. Rephidim is plural, so resting places. It is or it was supposed to be at least anyway, a valley of lush greenery, lots of water. It was a place to rest. It was a place where you would always find water. Very rarely would there not be water in Rephidim. In fact, all throughout history, only a couple of times is it written about that there is no water in this valley, which is almost always to be counted on for having water. Of course, this is one of the times. They get there. There might have been a small trickle of water, but certainly not enough for a couple of million people and their livestock. So this is out of their experience with God. They probably would have said, oh, okay, if there's water, we've seen this before, God can do this, but there's absolutely no water this time. And so this is out of their experience. And they say, well, how are we going to get water from nothing? We just can't do it. And so they start complaining. And more than complaining, they begin quarreling with Moses. Did you notice that word? There was no water, so in verse 2, they quarreled with Moses. They've kind of upped it a notch. They complained to Moses with no water. They complained to Moses with no food. They complained to Moses when they were camped at the Red Sea. But their complaining has gotten more than complaining. They're quarreling. Quarreling suggests arguing. It suggests that they aren't on the same side anymore. They don't see the same things or the thing the same way anymore. There's different ways, there's different views, there's different opinions, and they're quarreling, they're arguing with Moses. They don't like what Moses is doing. They don't like where Moses is taking them. They're probably wondering, does Moses even know what he's doing? Why would Moses bring us here where there's no water? He brought us to Marah where we couldn't drink the water, and now he brings us to a place where there is no water. What's with this guy? Is he competent? Does he know what he's doing? Is he qualified to do this? What's with him? And then they might think, does he even know God? Does he listen to God? Why would God bring us here where there's no water? Is Moses not listening to God? Is he just not knowing what he's doing? What's the deal? And as they're questioning Moses and his leadership and his decision making and questioning whether or not he can actually hear God or follow God, they probably begin thinking, and I say this because they're human and I'm human and this is where I would go. They probably start thinking, well, if I was leading, if I was making the decisions, well, if I was in that position, I would. It's easy to get there, isn't it? And they're arguing with him. They're quarreling with him. They don't like what is happening. They don't like his leadership anymore. And so now they want to stone him. Did you catch that? Moses says in verse 4 to God, he cries out and he says, what am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me. Like they are at the point of saying, Moses, we're getting rid of you altogether. We don't want you anymore. You're not our leader anymore. We're out of here. And so they are agitated. They're being stirred up. They are getting a mob mentality. And they've decided we're not going to follow Moses anymore. We're going to go back to Egypt. We're going to get someone who knows what they're doing. We're going to take matters into our own hands. And so they're ready to stone Moses. You know, it's interesting to me that the move from gratefulness to forgetfulness is pretty short, isn't it? The move from gratefulness to forgetfulness is pretty short. They were grateful for being rescued through the Red Sea. They sang songs, they danced, they worshiped God, they were grateful to him. They were grateful to God for turning the bitter water into sweet water. They were grateful to God for the quail and for the manna. And just 3 days later, maybe a week later, their gratefulness is gone. It's forgetfulness. They've forgotten what God has done. They've forgotten the things that have been done for them because they're focused on the things that aren't being done for them. Isn't that what we do? We tend to forget the good things that God has done for us because we focus on the things that God isn't doing for us, that we think he should. It's a pretty short move from gratefulness to forgetfulness. And the Israelites are showing that here. They're ready to stone him, to stone Moses. So Moses cries out and says, God, what do I do? And it's interesting in, where is that? Verse 2. Moses says, why do you put the Lord to the test? Why are you testing God? This is the first time that we see that phrase. Before, God was saying, I am testing the Israelites. I'm testing them to see if they're going to trust me. I'm testing them to see if they are going to follow me. I'm testing them to see if they'll obey me, if they're trustworthy. Now the Israelites, coming upon a place where they expect water and there is none and have no idea how they're going to get water, grumble, complain, quarrel, want to get rid of Moses. And Moses says, this is about your faith. This is about you forgetting what God has done. Why are you testing him? Why do you consider God not trustworthy? Why do you think God isn't here? Why do you think God won't show up? Why do you think you cannot put your trust in God? And that's kind of a dangerous thing for them. They have, the Israelites that is, have experienced God in a number of ways. They've experienced God in crossing the Red Sea. They've experienced God in healing of the waters. They've experienced God in providing for manna and meat. They've experienced God. God has been giving them faith. God has been showing up as trustworthy. God is saying, you can trust me, have faith in me, believe me, follow me, walk with me. And they have that certain amount of faith that God holds them accountable for. God says, you know me as your healer. You know me as your provider. You know me as your protector. You know me more now than you did before, and you have to be accountable for that. So what are you going to do with that? And the Israelites decide that they're just going to throw it away. They're going to take the faith that God has given them and walk away from it. And that's how they're putting God to the test. They're saying, God, we know you did these things in the past, but we don't believe you are going to do it now. We don't believe you can do it now. We don't believe that you're here. We don't believe in your presence. We don't believe in your power. God, woe is us, because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And Moses says, you have a certain amount of faith. Walk in that faith. They're like the people in the New Testament when after Jesus had fed the 5,000 people with 2 loaves and 5 fishes. Or was it 5 loaves and 2 fish? Now, look that up for me, would you? Somebody who's watching, look it up and put it in the comments on Facebook. At any rate, so Jesus multiplies the food and feeds the 5,000 people. He goes across the lake. There's people over there, and they want Jesus to feed them again. And Jesus says, you don't even believe in me. I've just done that, and you don't think I can do that again? You're not here because you want to trust in me. You're here because you want another miracle. You want me to prove that I can do it again. You're testing me. 5 loaves, 2 fish. Thank you. So here, the Israelites are doing the same thing. They have a certain amount of faith that God has given them and that God wants them to live up to, live in, and they're walking out of it. They're stepping out of the faith that God gives them and saying, God, we don't trust you anymore. God, we don't think you're here anymore. So God, prove it to us. God, do what we ask you to do. Instead of, God, we will do what you ask us to do. The faith they gained has no effect for their future. And that's how they're testing God. That's the danger. That's the danger that we get in sometimes. The faith that we've gained through knowing Christ, through walking with Christ, is tested when we come into a situation where we don't know what to do. And it's a dangerous time. We need to understand that the faith that God has given us is the faith we need to continue to walk in. And if we step out of the faith that God has given us has no effect then upon our future. And that's the dangerous place the Israelites were in. God had showed up time after time. Would they stay with him? Would they trust him? Would they remain in their faith? Or are they going to step out and throw their faith away because they're not sure it's good for the future. So Moses cries out, and God again gives them grace. God again gives them grace. They're in a dangerous place before God. Their faith is being tested, and they are trying to manipulate God and say, God, we don't really believe you're God unless you do this for us. And God is gracious to them. He answers Moses. He says, walk on ahead of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel and take your staff with you. Now, this is the first time that Moses takes the leaders with him. Before, Moses was at the Red Sea, and he just raised his staff and they crossed. They went to the waters of Marah, and he threw in the stick. The meat and the manna, it was Moses. Here now, something more is happening. God is teaching the Israelites something else. Because God says, take the elders of Israel with you and go ahead of the people. Move ahead of the people. Keep leading, but take other leaders with you. And he takes other leaders with him. He stands at the rock of Horeb. He strikes the rock, and water comes out. And it's interesting in verse 6. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. So all the elders of Israel are there with Moses. They hear what God says. They see what God is doing. They understand that Moses is listening to God. Moses does hear God. Moses is doing the right thing. God is with us. God is acting for us. God is with his people, and we are his people. And so the water's coming out. Now imagine the picture. It's just Moses and the elders. They're going to go back to the community of Israel, those who are ready to stone Moses, those who are ready to get rid of him as leader, choose their own leader, and do whatever they want to do. They're ready to step out of the faith that God has given them because they don't think it's useful for the future. And Moses comes back. Now, if Moses had come back by himself, it might not have been the same story. Moses has leaders with him. Moses has leaders that support him. Moses has leaders who, with their own eyes and with their own experience, can say to their group of people that they lead, trust God, trust Moses. This is right. We are doing the right thing. God is moving in the right direction. Moses does know what he's doing. Moses does hear from God. So stop grumbling, stop quarreling, and get behind the man. And come and grab some drink. Let's go to the spring that's coming out of the rock. Are you kidding me? He hit a rock and there's water coming out? Come on. That's ridiculous. No, you come on. I'll show you. So God provides leadership support for Moses. It's an act of grace not only for the community to have water. It's an act of grace for Moses, because Moses can share in the leadership burden. Moses can share in the leadership accountability. Moses has people, leaders that support him, that help him, and these leaders also are the ones helping to calm the community, to bring order to the community, to bring peace to the community. So it's an act of grace. God raises up these leaders to help Moses. It's an act of grace for Moses to support the leadership of Moses, but these leaders also support the followership of the community, because they can go back to the community and say, no, trust us. Even if you don't like where you think Moses is going, trust me, I trust Moses, let's go. And so Moses now has leaders who are helping him, supporting him, communicating for him, undertaking for him, relieving him of some of the burden of that leadership. And God does that for them. So the Israelites not only get something to drink, they not only get to fill up their their containers of water and celebrate, but they've learned that God is with them, that God's presence is with them, that they don't have to step out of faith and go their own way, that the faith that God has given them is the faith that they can use and should walk in for the future. The faith they have today that they received yesterday is good for tomorrow. And they learned that because God has provided leadership. Leadership helps people know and trust the presence of God. There's a second thing that God teaches them, which is why we're going to read the next story. The next story goes along with this one. I was tempted to take just this story alone, but it's so much better with the next one. Verse 8 of chapter 17. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, so we got another crisis. We have another battle. It's interesting. We had need water at Marah, need food, need water, a battle. What happened before Marah? A battle. Isn't this wonderful the way this is put together? The Israelites are learning another lesson about battle. Before, God was the one who fought the battle for them. The cloud and pillar of fire went between them and the Egyptians. They crossed over the Red Sea. They didn't have to fight. They didn't have to do anything. They just had to walk across or jog across or run across or whatever it was. And they got across, and God did that all for them. Now, there's a crisis of war, and they're going to have to do something about it. Would they trust God? Would they stay in the faith that God gave them yesterday, today, and would it be good enough for tomorrow? What are they going to do? Well, they're at Rephidim. They're all happy with their water. They're enjoying life. The Amalekites come and attack the Israelites. The Amalekites, by the way, were like a Bedouin tribe sort of thing. They traveled around in those areas. That was their territory. That was their livelihood. Rephidim was an important place to them, especially in a dry year, because if Rephidim was drying out, the rest of the place was drying out. So they were worried that they were going to lose their livelihood. They were going to lose their lives because of these millions of Israelites and their flocks. So they come and attack them. Turn with me to Deuteronomy 25:17. Deuteronomy 25:17. We learn a little bit about this battle and what's really happening. 25:17 says, remember what the Amalekites did to you along the way when you came out of Egypt. When you were weary and worn out, they met you on your journey and cut off all who were lagging behind. They had no fear of God. So the Amalekites aren't, it's not lining up in order and war and they're raising swords and running at each other. The Amalekites are following along after the Israelites, and those who aren't keeping up, those who are straggling, those who are left behind are being killed by the Amalekites. And as they are separated, this line of millions of people gets longer and longer as they're traveling. And the outside of the camp, as they're camped, the outside, the edges of the camp, they're being attacked by the Amalekites. Somebody comes and tells Moses, hey, we got a problem here. We have these Amalekites, and they are killing our people. And they're at the outside of the camp. So Moses, chapter 17, verse 8 or verse 9 says to Joshua, choose some of our men and go out and fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. So Moses says to Joshua, this is the first time we hear about Joshua. Joshua was obviously a leader of some sort. He was a leader of the army, the first leader of the army. Moses says, I want you to lead the army. I want you to choose some men. At this point in time, maybe they had taken the swords and whatnot that the the Egyptians left as they were floating in the sea and washed up to shore. Who knows? But Moses says, we got to defend our camp. We got to defend our people. We got to protect who we are. So Joshua gathers a group of people around him, a group of men who can fight. Obviously, they had been thinking about how they're going to protect themselves. Obviously, there was some sort of design and order for this purpose. So Moses tells Joshua to go. Interesting that Moses doesn't go himself. Moses is the leader, after all. Why isn't Moses leading the army? Well, Moses picks another leader. Moses understands the need for leadership, understands the need for help in leadership. And Moses says, you and I have different things to do. You are going to do the fighting. You are going to be the leader of the army. I am going to go up on this hill. And I'm going to raise my staff. And I am going to watch over all that happens. I'm going to be the one who entreats God on your behalf. And so Moses takes with him Aaron and Hur. Interesting again. Moses doesn't go by himself. He takes Aaron, his brother. Hur, we're not sure exactly who Hur was. Some believe that it was Moses' uncle. At any rate, he has a couple of leaders with him. He's learning, I can't do this alone. He's learning it's not a good thing to do this alone. He's learning something about leadership, and the Israelites are learning something about leadership. Because look what happens. Verse 10. Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him and sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Moses built an altar and called it, the Lord is my banner. He said, for hands were lifted up to the throne of the Lord. The Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. The Amalekites, by the way, just of interest to you, is probably, they are descended from Esau. Grandchildren, great-grandchildren, descended from Esau, who was Jacob's brother. And so they were cousins, the Amalekites and the Israelites, or third cousins, or whatever that is. Many times removed, at any rate. So there's Moses. He's up on the hillside. Probably not a large hill, but enough that he's seen. He's raising his hands. Now, he's not just got the staff like this. More than likely, it says both hands are in the air. He's got his staff holding onto his staff, and he's raising it up in the air. Do an experiment. Take a 5-pound weight in each hand and hold it up. How long are you going to be able to hold that up? Not very long. You're going to get tired. Your arms are getting tired. Your back's getting tired. Your legs are getting tired. Your feet are getting tired. Moses does this from the beginning of the day till sunset, all day long. I'm guessing you aren't going to go very long holding your hands up in the air. And when his hands are up in the air, Joshua and his army is winning. They're winning the battle. When he lowers his hands because he's got to take a break because his hands are going numb and his shoulders are killing him, he's got to take a break. And when he does that, all of a sudden, Joshua begins losing. Now, you're one of the people who are not in the army. You're in the camp. You're watching this whole thing. You're wondering how it's going to work out. If you're in the army, you don't have time to watch what's happening with Moses. You're focused on the guy in front of you. But if you're in the camp, you're watching Joshua, and you're praying that Joshua is going to win, because if he doesn't win, the Amalekites are going to wipe you out next. They're your only line of defense. And you're watching Joshua, and then you look over and you see up there on the hill, you see Moses. And Moses has his hands up. And Moses then has his hands down. And you look over there and you realize Moses has his hands down, and this does not look good for us. And then you look over there and you see his hands are up, and you look over there and you go, oh, this looks good for us. And when Moses' hands are up, you're starting to make the connection. There's something going on here. When Moses is raising his hands up to God and the staff is in the air, we're winning. When his hands are down, we're losing. Hur and Aaron noticed that. Moses notices that. That's why they're there. I don't know if Moses knew that he was going to need Aaron and Hur to roll a rock under him so he could sit down and hold his hands up. But I think he knew enough to listen to God to say, I need help. I need leaders that will help me lead. And so Aaron and Hur grab one arm each, and they hold his arms up as Moses sits down. The weight's taken off his back, the weight's taken off his legs, his feet, they're okay. The weight's off his shoulders, they're holding his hands up, and Moses is there. And his arms aren't dropping anymore because the two leaders are holding him up, while the other leader is fighting the battle and winning. So at sunset, the Amalekites realize they aren't winning. They aren't going to win this. They've lost too many people. The losses are too great, and they retreat. And off they go. So Joshua, verse 13, overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. I think those Israelite people, I think Moses, I think Aaron and Hur, I think Joshua, I think all the people in the army understood the importance of leadership that day. I think they understood the importance of leaders helping leaders that day. I think the first story, they understood that leaders help the people to know and trust the presence of God. In this story, they learned that leaders help the people to know and trust the power of God. There's so many applications we could make for leadership, but this isn't a leadership sermon necessarily. Because I think the key has yet to come. The key is this. Verse 15. Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." For hands were lifted up to the throne of God, or throne of the Lord. The Lord will be at war against the Amalekites. The Lord is my banner. What's a banner? Medieval days, every castle had their banner, right? It flew in their castle. When they went to war against another castle or another fiefdom, they flew the banner. And the banner was always in front. Someone was holding the banner. In the Mongols, they would go to war with a banner in front of them. The Greeks had a banner. The Romans had a banner. The banner for the Romans was the Roman eagle. Every nation has a banner. The United States has a banner. We sing about the banner. We pledge the banner. It's the Star-Spangled Banner. It's the flag. What does the flag do to Americans? What is the flag for when you go into war? Whether you're American or wherever you're listening from. You fly the flag. It's a rallying point. It's a rallying call. You look at the banner, you look at the Star-Spangled Banner, and it means something. It gives you courage. It tells you what you're fighting for. It brings emotions up into you to say, we need to defend ourselves. We need to defend the people of our country. We need to win this. Screw your courage to the sticking place. Shakespeare in one of his, in Hamlet. It's you look at the banner. In the national anthem, it's the song about the banner. Is the Star-Spangled Banner still there? There it is, flying. It rallies the troops. It gives strength. It gives encouragement. It gives hope. It gives comfort. It gives strength. It gives motivation. It's the banner. But it's more than that. The banner is indicative of who we are. It tells us who we are. When you see the banner that's star-spangled, you know who we are. That's why the great divide in America is, who are we? When we see that star-spangled banner, what does it mean? What does it mean about who we are? And our country is divided about who we are and who are we becoming. So when the Bible says, the Lord is my banner, the Israelites learned that their banner isn't star-spangled. Their banner isn't a flag. Their banner is the symbol of God being lifted up. Their banner is prayer to God. Their banner is God himself. And they learn that God is their power. God is their strength. God is their victory. They learn that God is their banner. God is the one that gives them motivation. God is the one that gives them heart. God is the one that gives them strength. God is the one that rallies them to say, we can overcome this. We can defend this. We don't have to give in. We are people of God. We're the children of God. We're the people of God. We're the nation of God. They learned that day who God is and who they are before God. God is their banner. God is everything to them. God is the one who leads them. God is the one who loves them. God is the one who pours grace upon them. God is the one who protects them. God is the one who gives them his presence. God is the one who gives them his power. God is their banner. And as they're watching Moses, and as they reflect upon the battle and all that happened, they realize, they learn that their banner is God himself. And they are God's people. And that means something to them. They've learned that God leads them. The flag doesn't lead them. The staff doesn't lead them. Moses doesn't lead them. Their other leaders, their elders don't lead them. God leads them. And the same thing exists in the church. The pastor doesn't lead the church. The elders don't lead the church. The worship team doesn't lead the church. Jesus leads the church. Ephesians says Jesus is the head of the church. Jesus is the banner for the church, just as God showed himself to be the banner for Israel. We are God's people. He is our banner. He is everything for us, so that we can know and trust him for his presence with us today and tomorrow. We can know and trust him for his power with us today and tomorrow. Because God's our banner. And the faith he has given us yesterday, that we walk in today, will be good for tomorrow's day also. God is your banner. Is he? There's a scripture verse, it won't be up on the screen, Isaiah 2:22. It says, stop trusting in man. He has only a breath in his nostrils. Of what account is he? In other words, trust in Christ. He's our banner. He's our leader. He's our presence and our power and our faith for yesterday, today, and forever. Amen. Well, thanks for joining us again this morning. Know and remember, the Lord is your banner. He is your presence. He is your power. He is your protector. He is everything. This is why Scripture can rightly say, if God is for us, well, who can be against us? Go with God, knowing that he is your banner.